Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ziad, Crohn's disease patient, NHS worker and educator, here bringing you IBD facts and taboo breaking chats. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe on my channel. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to this lesson on the causes of IBD. So to give you an overview of this lesson, we're going to look at who can actually get IBD and then some of the possible causes, which include lifestyle, genetics and environmental factors. And we're also going to have a look at the immune system, which we have previously covered, but we're going to look at how all these factors can bring about an abnormal immune response leading to IBD. So there is no way to predict who and when someone will get or show the symptoms of IBD, as it can manifest at any time in a person's life. However, having someone in your family who has IBD does increase the chance of developing the disease itself. Now, approximately half the cases of IBD present during the childhood and adolescent years, and women are more likely to develop Crohn's disease than men, but more men develop ulcerative colitis than women. It is worth mentioning that having these risk factors is not the same as saying that you will definitely develop IBD. It's only saying that your risk of developing it is higher in comparison to those who do not have those factors. So let's look at some of those factors. So we're going to start off with lifestyle factors. So lifestyle factors can include your diet or your nutrition, exercise, sleep, smoking, and medications. So let's look at diet and nutrition first. So the evidence to suggest that food can either cause or cure IBD is contradictory, making it harder to predict who or may not be at an increased risk of IBD. It has been shown that malnutrition, interactions with the gut microbiota, and food intolerances can lead to dysbiosis, which can increase a person's risk of developing IBD. One of the main theories put forward is changes in the gut microbiota due to the Western diet. Now, the Western diet is high in fats and refined sugars and low in fruits and vegetables, which increase the risk of dysbiosis within the digestive system. Looking at physical activity levels or exercise, it has been shown that physical activity has been correlated with a decreased risk of Crohn's disease, but surprisingly not with ulcerative colitis. In two large studies that looked at exercise and IBD, showed that physical activity in women, the risk of Crohn's disease actually decreased with exercise, but not with ulcerative colitis. Looking at sleep, and sleep deprivation has been related to an increased likelihood of developing ulcerative colitis and experiencing flare-ups in people with existing IBD. Now, sleep deprivation is associated with the production of inflammatory cytokines within the body, which does increase the risk of triggering an inflammatory response. And with smoking, there is evidence to suggest that smoking increases the risk and makes people more susceptible to developing Crohn's disease. It has also been seen in some studies that in people with Crohn's disease who do smoke are more at risk of having frequent flare-ups, suffering from strictures, require more surgery, develop more complications, as well as find that medications don't work as effectively as they would if they didn't smoke. However, in comparison to ulcerative colitis, strangely, it has been seen that smoking may provide protective effects against the development of ulcerative colitis as well as its symptoms. Now, let's look at the different types of medications that are thought to be involved with the risk of developing IBD. Firstly, we have antibiotics. So antibiotics are medications that are used to either prevent or treat bacterial infections, but they can also increase the risk of causing dysbiosis within the gut and possibly increasing the risk of IBD. If we look at hormone replacement therapy, this is a form of therapy which contains female hormones that are used to replace the estrogen that the body stops making as a female enters menopause. Hormone replacement therapy is thought to be linked with an increased risk of developing ulcerative colitis, which can continue to increase the longer the drug is used. The oral contraceptive, currently there is very little evidence to suggest that the use of the oral contraceptive pill increases the risk of Crohn's disease. However, some studies have suggested it may slightly increase the risk of ulcerative colitis. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as ibuprofen are medications that work by reducing the inflammation within the body. It is thought that these types of drugs can increase the risk of Crohn's disease due to how they work within the body by affecting the integrity of the intestines. It is also known that these drugs actually increase the risk of causing a flare-up in those with IBD as well. And now we're going to look at some of the environmental factors which could possibly increase the risk of developing IBD. So firstly, we'll look at the microbial factors. So there are trillions of different types of bacteria in the digestive system. And as mentioned earlier in this course, to simplify things, they can be good or bad bacteria. When the balance tilts towards the bad bacteria, that's when dysbiosis occurs. Now, it's not clear whether dysbiosis may be a cause of IBD or whether it develops in response to the development of IBD. However, there are certain bacteria that have been identified in those with inflammatory bowel disease. So in comparison to those who have a healthy or normal digestive system, it has been seen that dysbiosis in those with Crohn's disease is caused by low levels of bacteroides and firmicutes and high levels of gamma proteobacteria, actinobacteria, and enterobacterials. In those with ulcerative colitis, dysbiosis is thought to be caused due to the levels of low firmicutes and high levels of gamma proteobacteria and enterobacterials. It should also be mentioned that there is an increase in the sulfite-reducing delta proteobacteria, where it is thought that the extensive production of nitric oxide and sulfur contributes to the development of ulcerative colitis. Now, there's still a lot of research going into the roles of microbials in IBD. However, interestingly, there's something called Mycobacterium avium subspecies paratuberculosis, or better known as MAP. It's a type of bacteria that belongs to the same family of bacteria that causes tuberculosis and leprosy. Its relevance to IBD is that research has shown that MAP can cause Jones disease, which is a form of inflammatory bowel disease, but in animals, and in particularly in domesticated livestock. It has been suggested that over 90% of dairy herds are infected with MAP, and that pasteurization of the milk from these cattle does not kill all of the MAP bacteria. This can cause it to be consumed by humans, and it is thought that MAP can cause a dysregulation of the immune system and inflammation of the nervous system of the gut, changing the permeability of the gut and triggering an immune response. There is currently research being done into developing an anti-MAP vaccine, and a lot more research still being conducted into MAP itself. And now moving on to the genetic factors that could possibly increase the risk of IBD, we need to know that our body is actually made up of trillions of cells. Within these cells, there is a nucleus which acts as the brain of the cell that allows that cell to carry out certain functions. Within that nucleus are chromosomes, which are found in pairs that are made up of long strands of deoxyribonucleic acid, or better known as DNA. Genes are a section of these long strands of DNA and are made up of 4 components: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. It's important to notice because the different combinations of the 4 components can be found in different people, which allows for genetic diversity between people, as they can determine our physical traits such as height, hair color, and eye color. Now, these components can also come together to code for different proteins, enzymes, and hormones that are used in the body to help carry out functions such as keeping our heart beating, digesting food, as well as coding for components of the cells of the immune system. Now, these genes can be turned on or off depending on the signals they receive from the body, and it is thought that certain genes can be turned on or off and increase the risk of developing IBD. Looking at if IBD can be inherited, a family history of IBD is a risk factor of developing the disease itself, as most people with inflammatory bowel disease do have a relative who also has the disease. So if one parent has IBD, there is an increased risk of passing it onto their child, but this risk increases to over 30% if both parents have IBD. It's thought that the risk of a female child developing IBD increases if the mother has the disease, and that female offspring are at a higher risk than their male counterparts. Additionally, it's thought that transmission of IBD is more common from mother to child rather than from father to child. So which genes actually cause IBD? So there's been many advances in genetic research over the years, and as part of those advances, some genes have been identified to actually be thought to increase the risk of IBD. It's important to understand first that when genes get damaged, this can cause them to mutate, which then changes how they function and impacts on what they code for. The first one we're going to look at is nucleotide binding oligomerization domain 2 gene, or better known as the NOD2 gene. This gene codes for a protein that is able to recognize and get rid of harmful pathogens in the human body by triggering an immune response that causes inflammation. Mutations in this gene can impact on the ability of the cells of the immune system to actually recognize these harmful substances, which therefore increases the risk of that harmful substance multiplying, causing disease and causing damage to the body. And it's thought that those with mutations in this gene are at an increased risk of developing Crohn's disease. Secondly, human leukocyte antigen, or the HLA complex. This is a series of genes that code for what is known as the major histocompatibility complex. So this complex binds onto fragments that are produced by harmful substances that enter the body, and they help in signaling to the immune system that immune response is needed to get rid of that harmful substance. The way HLA is being thought to be implicated in IBD is that this complex will vary between people, and HLA type can actually differ according to a person's ethnicity, and it's thought that the variations in HLA type are associated with Crohn's disease. Looking at the inflammatory bowel disease, or the IBD5 gene, it's thought that this gene is responsible for coding the protein needed to help the body to cleanse and eliminate damaged cells. So mutations in this gene can affect the Paneth cells of the intestines, which are responsible for releasing antimicrobial substances to protect the gut. Mutations of the IBD5 gene is thought to allow harmful substances to accumulate in the gut, which then triggers inflammatory responses of the body within the gut, which increases the chance of inflammation occurring in the intestines, causing damage and triggering IBD. There are other types of genes involved, so cadherin type 1, hepatocyte nuclear factor 4 alpha, and laminin beta 1. All these genes are thought to be more involved with ulcerative colitis. However, there is a lot of overlap between the types of genes thought to be involved in Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Mutations in these genes can cause a dysregulation of the intestine, causing it to become more permeable and allow more substances to enter the gut, which then can lead to an immune response, which can cause intestinal inflammation. So now we're going to put together everything we've just learned about the risk factors and see how they come together to trigger an abnormal immune response. So as we mentioned in previous lessons, we need to know the three different types of immunity. So innate immunity is the immunity that you are born with and can include the physical barriers to pathogens, such as your skin. Adaptive immunity is immunity that develops throughout your life as you become exposed to pathogens that cause disease. And passive immunity is the type of immunity that you get from either breast milk or having vaccinations rather than producing them yourself throughout exposure. When we talk about the immune system of the gut, we are mainly referring to both innate and adaptive immunity, which is separated from the gut microbiota by epithelial cells and mucus that act as a barrier. This barrier allows the gut to keep an optimal environment, and if this barrier does not work properly, it allows more substances into the gut. When the immune system doesn't work properly, there is a higher chance of harmful substances to survive in the gut. This increases the chance of dysbiosis to occur within the environment, and then this activates the innate and adaptive immune responses to occur, causing immune cells to be recruited to the gut, causing an overexpression in inflammatory responses and causing damage to the intestines that is seen in IBD. So to summarize this lesson, we've looked at the possible factors that can trigger an abnormal immune response which lead to IBD, and these factors can include lifestyle, environmental, and genetic factors.